Hello, everyone. This is Travel Light, my conversation series with Friends of the Heart. And my name is Alexandra Cosmo, and I'm sitting here with Patricia Lawrence. And I felt like I would like to record this session because the things came up for me um, are very general in the mind, and I felt like it could be helpful for brothers and sisters. And I love our conversations with Patricia. They always help me go deeper in the mind. So I hope if it helps anyone, then that's great. So thank you, Patricia, for saying yes to it.
It is my pleasure.
So, let's jump right into it. There are several things that happened since we talked the last time. One of it is that I was doing these conversations, and it was such an interesting experience that um, I was doing, and I am doing what I love and enjoy, but still my experience was that I can still overdo it. And we talked about it before, that I was kind of trying to find my edge with this. When I started to feel that, okay, maybe it's too much now, I can talk this much and record 2 conversations a day, not during the whole week, but let's say like 2 days a week. Some of it, I recorded 2 conversations, and I just felt like it's too much. But I wasn't sure that maybe it's just coming from the mind, maybe it's just fear. So I wanted to be sure, and then the body started to shut down, my voice started to go away, and then it was kind of obvious. And then I wasn't sick for a very long time, maybe even 2 or 3 years. And this time, so it was like flu-like symptoms, coughing and um, no stuff and feeling blocked inside or this kind of thing. But if I take away all the labeling, then it almost felt like a mystical experience. And I knew that it's not really about like when I was sometimes meeting people and they told me like, oh, you got the flu too. And depending on whom I was meeting, I didn't start to go into explaining it. Well, yeah, people say that it's the flu, but I know that all of it, the cause of it is inside. And so this was my experience of it. And there was a lot of allowing and just breathing through it, and sorting through some beliefs, why I was creating this for myself. For example, the reason why I didn't say sooner that I'm gonna stop and just slow down and not record so many conversations was because I hate, strong word. Like I don't really like rescheduling things if I don't really have to, or quitting on things if I already made a promise. So that was one theme for me about this, and also just really enjoying it. And maybe there was some fear of not being busy, even though before that I usually loved the spaciousness and I was afraid of being busy. So it was almost like I was flipping into another personality or version of me that I used to operate before. Like I was usually, for example, when I was working in a job, I was operating from this, you know, busyness and having my schedule full all the time. And there was something about it I was missing actually. Just being in the midst of things and being in the flow more. But I kind of flipped into the other side of the pendulum. And so I guess I realized it's about finding the middle way again. Like Joshua is talking about that so many times, just not being too passive and not being too just busy, busy, busy. So that's one introductory thing. But the thing that really shook me last week was that somehow I came around a video from someone from my old spiritual community, from A Course in Miracles. They were the ones I invited more than 10 years ago to Hungary, so I know them personally. And then he has this podcast, and I was listening to his podcast, and he was talking about his last year, how he got a diagnosis of having colon cancer. And how he went through a process of chemo and surgery, and how it was about letting go of control and guilt and just allowing the experience and having miracles. And then during one of his podcasts, he mentioned another woman from the community whom I also know personally, and she also came to Hungary in 2014. And he just casually mentioned, like, oh, she passed away. And I just couldn't comprehend. First, I thought that I misheard it, because she's quite young, like between 40 and 45. And then I had to investigate it. Like, did I misheard it, or what's happening? And then I found out that in October 2023, she died. Like, she passed away. And also I'm not so sure, like brain tumor or lung cancer. And for her, it was pretty fast, like 2-3 months. And so now I'm getting to the belief I wanted to talk to you about. This was so shocking for me, because I realized when this happened, and I listened to some of the videos where they shared about it, that it was such a strong belief in my mind that, if I serve God, then bad things won't happen to me. And also there is this lesson in A Course in Miracles that sickness is a defense against the truth. So I have conflicting things now in my mind, like what is really sickness, and why do we create it, and like how could this happen? Like, because in my mind, what's in my mind now is both of them, they gave their lives to God, to serve them and be, so to speak, miracle workers, and go and share and be a messenger of peace, and all this. So it's like all their lives is about prayer and following guidance, following Jesus, Joshua. And so I just don't understand it. And it started to bring up a lot of fear because if this is so, then really anything can happen. And I think I tried to find some kind of a safety or peace about this, like in this belief that, oh, if I do good, maybe being a good person or a good way of mastery student, and then this ties also into my translations, like because I finished the volume 1 of the early years 2 weeks ago with the last chapter, and it was also an interesting experience because I could have celebrated it, but I'm not there in my process yet. I mean, it feels beautiful, but I feel like the celebration will come later for some reason. And then I noticed that I just completed the translation, and like 4 or 5 days later, it already started to come into my mind that, oh, I could just go on and continue translating, which is fine, but then this came in, this news about these two acquaintances of mine from the spiritual community. And then I started to see that maybe or I'm sure there's still a part of my mind where there's guilt. And then I try to cover it over through translating because this is service. And it's almost like trying to avoid God's punishment. That's what I started to see. You know what I mean? That these things combined, my own experience with sickness and then what happened with these two personal acquaintances, and then finishing the translation, the volume 1 of the early years, and then seeing that something wants to just, continue and translate. I started to see this deeper belief of still believing in a punishing God, still believing in sin, and then sin asks for punishment, right? And then maybe I'm doing that to myself so I can avoid God's punishment or lessen it or whatever. So you know how it is, like when something comes up, then like it's a whole package. And maybe I have more peace about it, so I'm not so rattled about it anymore, and I breathe through a lot of it. But I know that this is something that I want to talk to you about it. Like, how do you see it, or what's your experience with this sickness, death, service, and believing in a punishing God? I know it's a big chunk, but I'm just so curious what comes to your mind about this.
It's a beautiful question. Yeah, and a question that you're not alone grappling with this question. There are many others, I'm sure. I'm not familiar with the Course of Miracles. I'll say that up front. I don't know what the Course of Miracles says about illness or any of that. What I do know is that because we are an extension of God, we're made in God's image, and that means not the physical image, obviously, but we're made in God's energetic image. And God is love, so therefore we are love. Yes? You follow?
Mm-hmm.
God has given us infinite freedom to do as we like, to create as we want. What we do with that freedom is what we experience through our choices. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
one thing that Christ did was got curious. I wonder what it's like to experience a dimension of contraction and, density, etc. Maybe that wasn't the thought form, but it was something like that. And then in order to experience that, Christ made the choice to see if it was possible to separate from God. And as we know, when a lie is repeated often enough, it becomes a belief. It can become a belief, yes? So this was a belief. I am separate from God. That was the first choice. From that, a whole lot of other choices were made as we got lost in that belief. We created bodies, forms, everything that we see with the physical eyes. This brought a number of experiences. The body was not infinite. The body begins in time and ends in time. So the body dies. In the meantime, because of many different beliefs, circumstances, relationship problems, whatever, illness can be created. So it's nothing to do with God, first thing, right? It's not that God looks at us and says, you did something wrong, I'm going to punish you. It's not how can God be a punishing God if God is love? Doesn't make sense. So right there, we noticed that's a belief. And it's a belief that the church has perpetuated. It's become part of our conditioning through parents, through church, through schools, maybe upbringing, etc. Even in the Catholic Church, they teach you that God needs to be feared. It's a fearsome God. How does that work if God is love? Why would love need to be feared? Doesn't add up, right? So
Yeah,
right there again.
So what comes to mind is that it's really about my decision, because this also started to come up lately. Like, do I really believe that God is love? And maybe that's why I also created this experience, because at the same time, we are with my Hungarian group in the Way of the Heart third lesson, which is about projection and forgiveness mostly. And so what comes to mind is that some part of me still wants to project this onto God and not taking responsibility that I created this, because I want to experience it, or maybe I think that this is the most efficient way to stop what I'm doing and just slow down or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and look at your choices as completely innocent. Don't punish yourself for your choices. That's another thing that I've done. I'm bad because I created this, and now look at the trouble that I'm in. Yes, I deserve it. Bad, bad, bad. So there's a lot of self-punishment that we experience as well. God doesn't punish. We punish ourselves. We choose fear. Fear is a choice. Suffering is a choice. Punishment is a choice. And it's a choice that we were given from infinite freedom. So the choice itself is not a big deal. This is what we chose to experience. We're experiencing it. However, we then begin to identify and take that belief on as truth. God punishes us because I've been bad. I have sinned. Therefore, I need to be punished. Who's doing the punishing? I'm calling it in because of my belief. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and also like a lot of judgment about still what's
Yeah,
good and bad, right?
of course, that the whole thing comes with it.
Mm.
So, and that's where the responsibility comes in too, to begin to see that, this is a belief. Like you're beginning to see, could this be a belief? And then kind of feel into that. And then you go, Joshua talks about taking responsibility for our choices, to call home or love or embrace our creations. This is a creation. Could it be my creation? You feel into that. Yeah, actually, it does feel like my creation. And so you begin to question it. Now the field is open for questioning the mind. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
you understand, yes, this could be my creation. And then you feel into that. You come to see that, yes, this is my creation. The next thing is, how can I see this differently?
Mm-hmm.
And ask Holy Spirit, Joshua, to be with you. How can I help me see this differently? It's a really important question, and they very much want to be a part of our lives, Joshua, and the people and the souls that we can't see, discarnate beings, really want to help us and be part of our lives, but we forget to ask. At least I used to forget to ask. But how can I see this differently? And then as you ask that question, different experiences and opportunities will show up. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about because you've experienced that yourself in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does Joshua teach in Wave Mastery about sin? He says sin, there's no such thing as sin. Sin is simply means missing the mark. Missing the mark. The thing is that we take it seriously. There is the glue. Yeah? Seriousness is the glue that ties us and binds us to fear, to beliefs. So we take it seriously, then we identify with it. I am bad. Now we have an identification. I am bad. I have sinned. Therefore, I need to be punished.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
Having said that, yes, illness can be, is definitely part of our journey and can be seen as an opportunity to let go of fear, to transcend what our beliefs. So if you have a cold, and a lot of people have done research into this, Louise Hay was one that started, I believe, way back when. I'm sure you're familiar with Louise Hay. Others have written about what all these illnesses mean. And the body will usually tell you where the pain comes up. So a cold is often associated with confusion or not slowing down, or something, definitely when there's an illness in the body, something requires your attention. Something wants your attention. Please look at this. Please take notice of this. This is what's going on. I'm showing you what's happening. My liver hurts or whatever. My my shoulder hurts. What am I carrying on my shoulders? What am I holding in my liver, etc.? Simply ask the question, ask the body to show you. Having said that, there are beings in this world that are, I would say, definitely awake and enlightened. Like we had an abbot here on Kauai at the Hindu monastery, Guru Deva, who was an amazing being of light, yet he had cancer. A famous Indian master, Maharishi, I think it was Rama Maharishi, but I may be corrected on that. He had cancer also. And as JM is fond of sharing that, he, the disciples of Maharishi were very concerned. Oh, master, you have cancer. You should go to the doctor, have surgery, have it looked at. And Maharishi simply said, why? The cancer cells want to live too.
Mm-hmm.
So he was completely disidentified with the body, and he just looked at the body as the body. It wasn't who he is. He had transcended that.
Mm-hmm.
And therein lies the journey for all of us, to transcend the body and come to the realization that the Christ that we truly are has nothing to do with the body. It's not the body. In fact, the body is a creation of Christ. Why did we create it? Well, just to experience it. Why not? Like a boy or a child who goes to the beach with his little buckets and his little shovels and rakes and whatever, and creates a castle. Castle made out of sand. And then a big wave comes and the castle is gone. Not a big deal. But through the way we've been raised in childhood and on through society, etc., we have come to believe that we are the body. We're identified with the body. Look at it, everything, at least here in the West, in the US, lots of products. How to stop the aging process, how to look youthful when you're 90 years old, how to stop the wrinkling process of the skin, etc. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. People are afraid of the body dying.
Yeah.
You're not going to beat Mother Nature. She always wins. And the body is going to die sooner or later. Whatever products you use, ageless stuff, serums, doesn't matter, surgeries, eventually nature will catch up on you, on the body, and says, it's time for you to put the body down. Like you're taking off a coat. That's all it is.
Mm.
Having said that, the body is not to be ignored. It is a teaching and learning device for us, for sure.
So could it be also that, of course, it's all just assumptions. I'm just still trying to make sense of it, that, you know, that when someone not really embraces the body, or maybe even denies it or avoids issues with it, then it just accumulates and form of a disease. Because that's also such a pattern on the spiritual path, that we go into the other side of the pendulum of pushing away the body and not wanting to deal with it and denying it.
I've noticed that that is particularly my own personal experience of that I've seen particularly among Course in Miracles students. Oh, the body isn't real. The world isn't real. The world is an illusion. The body is an illusion.
Yeah.
I actually witnessed somebody in Mexico when I was there for some time 5 years ago, where I sat at dinner with a Course in Miracles. It was a Course in Miracles community, and I sat at dinner with someone from the Course in Miracles group who had neuropathy in his leg and could badly, was walking badly and needed a cane, and he had numbness in his toes and feet, and he was unstable and unbalanced on his feet. And he kept saying the body isn't real. And I said to him at some point after listening to him, I said, but what if I stepped on your toe or bumped into your arm? Would you say to me, and it hurt, would you say to me, oh, it's not real, it's not hurting? No, you would say, ow. Right? Ouch. But he kept saying the body isn't real, despite that. And eventually his body got so bad, such bad condition, he had to leave the community and go back to the US to be cared for by his family. I don't know what happened since, but I could see him progressing. The illness was progressing in his body, and his body was screaming for attention, very obviously to me. But he said, no, the body isn't real, the body isn't real. And the more he ignored it, the worse the body got, because the more attention it tried to get. So the body's not to be ignored. It is to be disidentified with. And when you're disidentified with the body, then when illness comes, it's neither here nor there. You just deal with it. Tune into your heart, ask for guidance. What will you have me do about this? And follow what comes. So that's one aspect of that. The other thing is that I asked a teacher of mine once, who is a very evolved soul, and I asked him, but you have this, I don't know what he had, a cold or something in the body showed up. I said, what is this about for you? And he looked at me and he said, when we incarnate, when we choose to incarnate, that is a choice. That choice comes with ramifications. It comes with results, experiences. Part of that experience is that at some point your body's going to fall ill. Yeah, sure. So you take care of the body, you take extra vitamins or whatever you're guided to do. Have surgery, don't have surgery, whatever it is that you're guided to do, you go take care of it, but it's not a big deal. Does any of this make sense?
Yes. Yeah. It's for me, I think it's fear of physical pain. What came to my mind. Because in my mind there are memories of physical pain, you know,
Sure.
when, for example, I used to have so many times that urinary disease when it hurts when you pee. I don't know how you call it. But
Urinary.
that has also a cause, like white, because I was looking outside of myself for pleasure through sexuality, misusing the body, and, you know, through men. And so, but I didn't know that at that time.
Sure.
And then when I started to resolve that issue, it started to go away. And also drinking too much alcohol, for example, that was also a cause of it. But that's also going outside of myself for release. And so, um, but at the same time, I can see that there's still the fear of the physical pain. And or if I just tune into my being, I can sense that there's still fear of sickness. And even though I had this experience now and I could see why I created it and how it was an experience and a lesson in allowing and letting go of control and going within and slowing down and everything. But if I'm honest, I can still see that it's there, the fear about it. And also, like, what the other issue I told you about, beliefs about service, how that ties to service, that now I have to face this new reality that it's really not about trying to make amends with God or trying to get on the good side of God, or whatever way I putting into it, that I really have to take responsibility for my choices and creations. And like, I can't use my service or my translations to, like, I don't know what would be the good word for it, like, cover over the guilt, because it's not for that. We talked about this before. You always told me to, are you doing it out of joy? And that's why I took a break from it, for example, for 2 years or sometimes for some months. And I'm happy about it that since last summer it's flowing so beautifully again, because it's easier for me to slow down and receive the insights and the peace. But it did shock me to see this belief. And I'm grateful for that this, what happened now with these acquaintances of mine from the spiritual community, that I used to have this, that I used to be a part of, and now it helped me to see this belief. And yeah, I'm not sure where I stand with it, but I do feel I still have some resistance. And I think the resistance is about really taking the responsibility, you know, for everything I create.
Yes. So as you uncover your beliefs and come to see your beliefs, just ask, Holy Spirit, how can I see this differently? And trust what comes. And it's a process of coming home to yourself. It's a process of, you start off first accepting yourself exactly where you are. in all honesty, with great honesty, this is where I'm at. I'm still feeling resistance. That's what is. Yes. I own that. I take responsibility for it, and I take the consequences. I'm in resistance. Why? Because you can. This is something you are exploring right now, and there's nothing wrong with it. It just is. Right? By doing this, slowly but surely, you begin to trust more what is given you in the way of how you can see this differently. So, for instance, like I said, you come across a belief, you uncover a belief, that's a belief. But how can I see this differently? What is the other side of the coin, so to speak? And then what comes is an aha moment. And if it doesn't come immediately, then it doesn't come immediately. It'll come another time. Just keep asking, how can I see this differently?
Mm-hmm.
And then insights come. And from the insights, you grow. And more, you come home to yourself because you're beginning to trust more. And the more you trust, the more you see that you are not the body. The more you see that God is not a God to be feared, a God that goes into punishment and can be negotiated with. God does not negotiate. I tried. It didn't work. Believe me. So that's the essence. Come home to yourself. Come to see that you're not the body. The body is, it's like a pet, like your little dog. It's a pet to be cared for, to be loved, to be embraced, but also to be used as a tool to extend love.
That's a very helpful metaphor for me because I love my puppy so much.
Yeah, so love your body as much as you love your puppy. Love yourself as much as you love your puppy. And everything is an opportunity for our learning, and that includes illness. Illness shows up maybe because you hadn't seen something before, maybe because something is asking for your attention to do something differently, to see something differently. I had an experience when my biological father died in 2020. 3 weeks later, I was doing some simple yoga poses, and I just went through my hips, my right hip, to the point that I couldn't walk. And I was bedridden for 2 weeks, and a friend came over and took care and looked after me and cooked food and, did a little bit of laundry so that I didn't have to sleep in dirty sheets, etc., all the time. And at some point, another friend just connected with me and said, okay, without thinking about it, the first thing that comes out of your mouth, why? He said, there's no coincidence that your dad died 3 weeks ago and now you're bedridden. Your hips are not working. You're not supporting the body. And it was the right hip in particular. So out of my mouth came, I'm releasing the burdens and the heaviness that I've carried for my father all my life. So I energetically carried my father and felt responsible for him, etc., which is my creation. God didn't want me to do that. This was my karmic relationship. As soon as that came out of my mouth, I thought, whoa. 2 days later, my body began to heal. A week later, I was walking. Just like that. Because why? Mothers carry their children on their hips. Women carry their children on their hips, right? You see it a lot. And the right hip was the masculine side. So yes, inner work is absolutely essential when illness shows up. When pain shows up as well. Why does pain show up? Are you punishing yourself for something? Right? And if you've done your inner work and the pain persists, what I have done in the past also is just to drop into love's breath. Some years ago, I was in a Tantra workshop in Poland. And we were invited to partner up and pick a whip or something. You know, something to flog the body with.
Yeah.
So I partnered up with this, everybody partnered up, and who was left was this German girl and myself, a young girl in her maybe early 30s, late 20s. And she began to whip me and really got into it. And we were naked, by the way, no clothing to mitigate the pain or anything like that. She really got into it, and almost like she was enjoying it. And I dropped into love's breath just automatically. And I came to a point of no pain. It was beginning to hurt. She really hurt me, especially when she was pulling my hair and things like that. And I came to a point of no pain. And it dawned on me, that's how Joshua got through the crucifixion. It was clear as a bell. So the mind is a powerful thing, as you know. There's a lot we can do with the mind to create and uncreate situations. When we don't know how to uncreate situations, it takes great humility to hand it over to Holy Spirit and say, I do not know what anything is or what it is for. I have created this, but I don't know how to uncreate it. Please help. They're there. And I can only speak from my personal experience.
And you know what came to mind is that the man who got through the illness in like 10 months through chemo and surgery, he also told about, he had this, before his diagnosis, this question popped up in his mind. It's like Joshua asked from him, or his higher self asked from him, do you want this to be slow or quicker? Because he mentioned that there was a part of his journey that everything was really fast, and it was just too much for him. And he asked this in his mind, like, could we take it slower, like more gentle? And then it seemed like there came a point where he was ready to just really dive into it and let go a big chunk of control and guilt. And then this was the means, it seems like, because he like really had to let go of plans for the future and just really be present and breathe and pray and everything. And as I'm studying the way of mastery, a deeper understanding came to me about the crucifixion too, because I was you raised in the Catholic school and Catholic religion and everything, and I never understood it, and the answers I got from priests never satisfied me. So I think that's why I was also guided to, I mean, this is the plan of atonement for me, to look at all these things differently, like you said, like what is this really about, like who is Joshua and what is the crucifixion, and it started to dawn on me that yes, it's not like he took up the sins of the world and our sins again, the belief in the sin, that it was about his choice and his journey back home, like you said, and this is how it looked like. And then we over focus on the crucifixion when it was, and his captivity and everything, when it was already only just a couple of days, and then we have him hanging from a cross all over the world through the sculptures and everything. And of course it brings up fear in the mind until somehow there is this understanding, and it started to change for me. Like when I look at these sculptures and in front of the churches or in the church, then now I have this authority within, like they just don't understand, because the authority is not outside. Like the religion is no more an authority for me, and I can stand in that conviction that the crucifixion isn't what we were told what it is. And this is how it started to dawn on me too, or I'm questioning it now, like probably I'm looking at these sicknesses and cancer or whatever also through not the right lens. So it's a false perception about it, what it is. And even though it's a thing like it's cancer, but different beings can choose it for different reasons. That's another understanding or insight that came to me. Like maybe this is the most effective and constructive use of time, like Joshua mentioned it. Like if we really want to let go of a big chunk of control or guilt, then some beings choose it, maybe. So and then it also gives an opportunity to other beings to extend love and care for, caretake. So I'm saying these things, but I still feel like energetically something's within, there's still fear around it, or like I want to embrace it and understand it, but it's easier to say this until it's out there and it's happening to others, you know. And maybe there are some lessons I can take through others or receive through others, but the fear is around, oh, is something like this is going to be also a part of my journey?
Not necessarily, because you're not that person. You make different choices.
Yeah.
It would be good. There are two very important questions for everybody to ask. What do I truly want? And it's not I, the ego, it's I, the soul, I, the Christ part of me. Even if you can't relate to it, you can ask, what does love really want? Yeah.
Mhm.
Second question is, how can I see this fear differently?
I like that. Like, what is this fear really about? Especially if I bring it back to this moment and not leave it on a theoretical level. Yeah.
Theoretical level doesn't get you anywhere.
Mhm. Like, what am I afraid of right now?
How
And
can I
because
see that?
like the other thing that I noticed lately, oh yeah, because I had another thing that happened in the last month or last 2 months that um, I was very inspired and very energetic girl and everything, and I started to have all these ideas, you know, and inspiration, and my mind started to go out into the future. And then, so I wasn't present, and I put a cup into the microwave that shouldn't be put in the microwave. Um, and it started to like spark and everything. And fortunately, I noticed it, but somehow, because my mind was somewhere else in the future, although I was inspired and everything, but still I was distracted. And then I hold this part of the cup as I was taking it out of the microwave, so I burned my hands. And again, it was a lesson in just be present, slow down, and also it was my right hand, which I'm right-handed, so I had to slow down and do things a little bit differently. Even with simple tasks like brushing my teeth and that stuff. I had to do it for some days with my left hand because my right hand was still healing. So that lesson was also about slowing down and not being distracted or going too far away into the future, because my mind does that a lot so many times. And it took, for example, that experience to become aware of this pattern in my mind. And that's a beautiful thing, because now my hand is healed, but I still have the awareness of this pattern and habit, and it started to shift it. Like I'm noticing it much quicker now.
It's not so much about slowing down as about being present.
Yeah.
Be present with what you're doing, with what you're thinking right now. Not to do, when you do something and your mind is somewhere else, it's a form of multitasking, isn't it?
You're right. Yeah.
So be present with what you're doing. You're taking the cup out of the microwave. Had you been present, you might not have burned your hand.
Probably, yeah.
Right. So, and when we're in presence, we're in God. When we're not in presence, we're in ego. It's really so simple, but we make it so complicated.
Mm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, because the other thing that comes up a lot for me, but of course then I'm not in love and with love, when boredom comes up. Like that's another thing that somehow, instead of dropping into love's breath, for example, or into breath and being with what's really present for me, something in me tries to solve boredom with the mind, like
Sure.
imagination or whatever. Yeah, so all of these things I created lately with the body made me aware of this more, these patterns and habits.
And boredom is definitely an energy of the ego. Only the ego gets bored. Christ doesn't get bored. Right. So next time when you're bored, just ask, Holy Spirit, what will you have me do, if anything? See what comes. I did that once, and I had no plan, and I stopped planning too, as you know. No plans for the whole day. And I thought, and I could see my mind going, oh, this is boring. How are we going to fill our time? Da-da-da, yada, yada, yada. So I just sat in a chair with my hands in my lap, and I waited. And I just sat, looked around, and I waited. 2 minutes later, the phone rang, and a friend wanted to talk about something important to her. We were on the phone for 2 hours. So when we slow down and open the time, the space, the heart for something to come through, we create a spaciousness for spirit and our soul to guide us, and we can actually receive the guidance. If we're constantly busy in the mind, we can't even receive the guidance, even if we ask for it.
Yeah, no capacity for miracles to happen.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that's really helpful, especially this question, like, how can I look at this fear differently and bring it back from the theoretical thinking into the practical, like, what is this really about now? Not hypothetical scenarios that we are afraid of, because usually we are afraid of something right now, or maybe we even receive the guidance, we are just hesitant to take the steps. That's another thing. Yeah,
and lots of people fear the future too, and they don't understand that the future is actually in our hands. That's why Jeshua's eternal question to us is, what do you truly want?
Yeah.
You,
even in
with a
situations, like specific situations, I think that's so helpful to ask this question.
Absolutely.
And dare to answer it to ourselves and not try to please others. Like that's a big one usually.
And not to drop into, what do I truly want? Well, I don't want this and I don't want that. That's not the question. The question is not, what don't you want? The question is, what do you want? Truly. Yeah. Truly, meaning in your heart of hearts. And the more you do that, the more you come home to yourself, because you're allowing your heart to speak. So I went through a period where my heart wanted one thing and my mind said, no, you can't do that. It was like a sabotage, self-sabotage. No, you can't do that. No, so-and-so wouldn't like it. So-and-so wouldn't like it. It wouldn't work because the time factor, the story, right? And often my heart would get overruled.
Mm-hmm.
And then at one point, I decided to stop listening to the mind because nothing ever happened that was of any value. And I decided to listen to my heart more, and pooh, everything opened up.
And isn't it also not just to have these useless conversations in the mind, but start communicating and joining? Like, if it relates to someone, then just join and talk about it, and not just have assumptions about what the other one thinks or wants or whatever. For me, that works so much lately. Even just a simple thing like today, I had this confusion in my mind. I didn't know why. I know that it's something about our joining today.
Mm-hmm.
And then I asked about, like, it was clear for me, but that I want to, join. And then I realized that it was the time zone difference, like something was there that had to be communicated. And even then that we communicated about it, we noticed that we still misunderstood each other, uh, and so many times it's just like this. And I don't know, there are some people it's harder to do this with because there's a resistance to communicate, and then the ones who are open, it can flow so beautifully. I have experiences with that. And then I can ask again the question, like, what do I want? And do I want to force the relationships that are just not flowing? Like, just don't flow for whatever reason. Can I allow it to be easy and not complicated?
Yeah, and as you evolve, relationships drop away. That's a natural course of events. And that includes relationships with family. Because you change, but others may not be changing. And therefore, there's this discrepancy, this gap that starts to form. Why would you force to keep that, to bridge that gap all the time? It becomes exhausting. And clearly, you know when a relationship is complete and falls away. Let it, just allow it. But about the confusion in the time difference, where did the confusion arise? It arose in the mind.
Yeah.
The heart still wanted to communicate. Your heart wanted to communicate with me. I did with you. And it happened because the mutual desire was there. The confusion arose in the mind, which tells me the mind doesn't really know anything. It can't even figure out time zones. And that's what that's the critter that we believe constantly.
Yeah. And it was the assumption. I noticed that I have to figure this out on my own. Like I can't, like it's already set, and I can't double check. Like, why would I? It was something about that. It was weird.
Yeah.
And then I noticed it that, well, let's just ask and make sure and double check.
And things became clear. But the mind confuses everything. And then we allow this critter to plan our future. Does that make sense? It doesn't to me.
Yeah, because it feels differently when the mind is used by love. Then there's clarity and simple directions and guidance, and when there's this clogged up mind and sense of confusion. But for example, I'm better with embracing confusion now. So if there's a confusion, I can get to the point so much faster with
Sure.
questions and like, what is this really about? Like today. And then it's so practical, and so many times it's about logistics and specifics. And that's one thing I realize, that I'm worthy to be clear on specifics too, because there's just one form love takes that I have clarity about.
Yeah, as Joshua teaches in the Way of Mastery, that the mind was designed to be the servant of the heart. The mind was never designed to run your life. But we've done it the other way around. No, the heart has to be the servant to the mind.
Right.
And look where it takes us. Look at the world. Chaos. Constantly.
So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much. It's always a joy to join with you.
Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you enjoyed it too. See you in the next video. Bye.